A cash crunch for another candidate in the 2016 presidential campaign, with reports that former Texas Governor Rick Perry has stopped paying his staff because fundraising for the campaign is drying up. But the senior advisor of a Perry super PAC denies this, tweeting, "We've got plenty of money. The super PAC is not going to let Rick Perry down." Let's talk about it with Joe Trippi, former campaign manager for Howard Dean and a Fox News contributor. Mike Shields is president of the Congressional Leadership Fund and a former RNC chief of staff. Joe, I know you have run a presidential campaign. Fundraising has got to be just about job one, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it sure is. And, it's gotten bad when they start not paying staff and put out that the reason they're doing it is so that they can make travel costs. That's always a really bad sign when you're down to basically just moving the candidate around. And the super PAC, sure, it can run a lot of ads and get some of the message out, but it's really hard in these early states for a super PAC to pay for the kind of organization you need in places like Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. So I think this is really troubling news for the Perry campaign if it bears out to be true.
Well, can the super PAC, Mike, pick up some of the slack? I mean, they're not allowed to pay the staff, right?
Yeah, they can. I mean, it's interesting. In the old days, Dick Gephardt once said that presidential campaigns don't end, they just run out of money. But that was before super PACs. And I think you saw in the last cycle, Newt Gingrich, Rick Santorum, they were really bolstered by their super PAC and kept them in the race. And I think you've seen other campaigns back to 2008, John McCain was sort of facing a similar situation. He wound up winning the nomination. So I think it's a little premature to really have too many alarm bells go off about Rick Perry. It's a competitive market for donors out there. You got 17 actual legitimate candidates running for president, but he's got $17 million in his super PAC, and I think that's going to be able to keep him in the race for quite a while.
He also tweeted this out today. The candidate himself tweets, "We are continuing the fight, and we will win." Then he adds these two words, "Donate today," and of course provided a link to get that done. He raised $20 million in his campaign last time around. Joe, does it surprise you that the campaign doesn't seem to be coming up with that kind of coin this time?
No, and look, the other, I mean, there is the competition for donors out there with this large a field, but the other problem here is no one wants to be the last person to max out to a campaign that's running out of money. I mean, in other words, the news of him running out of money stops other money from coming in. Even to the super PAC, people will stop giving. So that's a really tough hurdle to get over. And, I was with Dick Gephardt the first time he ran for president. We started running out of travel money. I was putting the campaign staff's hotel rooms on my personal card. He was actually putting the plane tickets on his personal card for the campaign staff at the end. It gets really rough trying to sustain a campaign when you're running out of cash. I do agree that super PACs elongate that, make the period last longer, but I still think it's really hard for a super PAC to make up the kind of organizational difference you have to have in Iowa, New Hampshire, in these early states. He's got to hit in these early states to get the money to come back in, and that's going to be hard with just super PAC funding.
So is it, Mike, a self-fulfilling prophecy? I mean, if, as Joe said, if he's having money troubles, are other donors reluctant to put their money into his funds?
Yeah, I mean, you never want those stories out there, and he's obviously got, like I said, competition even in his own state, which is a big money state. But I think there's another debate coming up in September. He actually did very well in the first debate, and I think it's a little premature to sort of start looking that far down the road. A lot of these campaigns are going to have ups and downs in their fundraising, and they've got to organize and get through these debates and then see where it is. I think it'll be after the next debate before you really start having the serious questions about where these campaigns are.
Meantime, let's talk about the Democratic side of the race. Democratic candidate for president Bernie Sanders, the senator from Vermont, releases what he calls a racial justice plan in a bid to win over African-American voters. Sanders calling for federal training of police and an end to mandatory sentences for nonviolent offenders, among other plans. Bernie Sanders comes from a mostly white state. He's originally from Brooklyn, Joe. Does he naturally have a constituency among African Americans?
No, not in the way that Hillary Clinton does or that other candidates in the past have on the Democratic side. So I think this is very smart for him. He's got, once you get out of Iowa and New Hampshire, if you're seeking the Democratic nomination, it's very hard going into South Carolina and some of these other diverse states to keep any momentum going if you can't appeal to African Americans and others in the minority community. So I think he can't just go build crowds and look at Iowa and New Hampshire. He's got to start looking at making deep inroads into the African American community specifically, again, because of the Clinton name. I mean, the Kennedys, the Clintons, these are names that have engendered a lot of affection in the African American community. He's not just running against a field where there's no one with a natural connection here. Hillary Clinton has one. And so he's got to overcome that if he's actually going to challenge her for the nomination.
Mike, Bill Clinton was often described as America's first black president. Does Hillary Clinton tap into that same affinity in the black community?
Well, I think the thing with Bernie Sanders, it's great being on with Joe Trippi. The last time the Democratic Party sort of dismissed a candidate from Vermont, it was Howard Dean, and he surprised everyone. I think they're underestimating, the Hillary camp had underestimated what Bernie Sanders could do. I think they said, oh, he's a socialist. The base of the party isn't there. And they're learning there's a huge part of the Democratic Party base that like a socialist. And so I think that they're having to react and scramble now. And now he's starting to add new parts of the coalition. He's going after the African-American vote. And they're starting, Hillary's up in Iowa already with television. I don't think they planned on having Bernie Sanders have this big of an impact. And really, every single one of the people going to these Bernie Sanders rallies knows that Hillary Clinton is a candidate. And they're showing up because they don't want her to be their nominee. And I think that's a huge problem for Hillary.
The race is getting interesting on both sides. Mike Shields, Joe Trippi, thank you both.
Good to be with you.